Welcome to the Young Crones Cafe, where you can get a magic brew full of all sorts of information, both witchy and practical.
Grab a cup of coffee and join us. I'm Elizabeth, a wordsmith.
And I'm Dave, a modern-day sage.
We are going to talk about various witchcraft and life topics from a slightly more mature perspective, at least most of the time.
Thanks for joining us.
Today's metaphysical kernel of thought is consecration. On the path, we don't do any type of formal ceremony to consecrate items that we are going to work with. First, we believe that everything is inherently sacred, so an item is already consecrated in that respect. Second, we don't consecrate because we believe it could potentially remove all type of energies attached to it. If someone has put themselves into making an item we intend to use in our practice, their maker's energy is now an important part of the energy of the item. It seems presumptuous for us to tell something what it needs for itself. Everything has a natural energy attached to it, and we choose to allow an item to return to its own natural energetic state after handling before it comes to us. For instance, if we go out and buy some crystals to work with, they arrive covered in other energies. They have been removed from the earth, shipped to a store, handled by being put in the display, and probably picked up by a number of different potential buyers before we ever purchase them. They need time to recover and to reset to their own natural energies, and any they choose to keep before we work with them. Because of this, we often place them somewhere quiet, where they can be exposed to the energies of the moon for a time. The same holds true for any other ritual or spell work items we may purchase. Everything from altar cloths to candles to herbs can benefit from a period of rest to reset before they can become part of our great work. We also make it a point to ask items as much as possible if they are willing to work with us. There is often a subtle energy of positive assent or a definite no as well. This is especially true when working with herbs or stones of some types. Hey, Dave.
Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Better.
Good.
The more we hang around together and talk about magical stuff and how we think about things, it just makes my day better.
I love it. I'm glad to be a positive part of your day today.
Yeah, well, you allow me, because sometimes the questions you ask, to clarify exactly what I meant when I wrote something, or you'll ask me questions about how did you get there from here? And the
Sure.
explanation, allows me to further think about what I think about things and what I believe.
Well, I have a rare opportunity in my place in that I have the time and a platform where I can go back through and take apart and read a book with one of the authors and ask the author for clarification and explanation, which most books I'm never going to have that opportunity. And so, like you and I were just talking about, for the folks that are out there listening, we would always hope that after we have a discussion on something from the book, that what we have done is helped it become more clear or more concise or in some way improved or enhanced.
Mm-hmm. And if that's not what you're thinking, you think it's even a bigger piece of crap than the first time you read it, that works too. You are perfectly able to disagree with anything we have to say.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Oh, yeah. Please.
I recommend that you disagree with the Dave often.
I don't know. There are times when you get things very much more concisely than I do. I tend, because I'm a writer, to use.
Yeah, and I'm a coder. I want to break it down to a yes or a no. Yep.
Exactly. And I tend to use more words sometimes than necessary. All right. Consecration.
What is consecration? What does that actually mean?
It's to make something sacred or to put it aside, to bless it for a sacred purpose. More than anything else, I think, is the best definition of consecration.
Okay.
And inherently, because we believe that everything is sacred, then items are naturally consecrated, including us, in that respect. Okay, and we also believe.
So I'm sorry, but
Go ahead.
part of my role here is to play the funny guy.
The devil's advocate.
Is the wine already blood before the guy waves the napkin over it?
That's transmutation. Entirely different thing. That's magic.
Okay.
Okay, that's transmutation.
So it was sacred wine even before it was transmuted into blood.
Just by its very existence is how pagans and witches look at it. I don't know how Christians see it. I'm not Christian. You know what I'm saying? But if you got somebody up there who's transforming wine,
So my cell phone is sacred.
sure. In its own way as a means of communication.
Well, I love that you say it the way that you do. We believe that everything is inherently sacred, so an item is already consecrated in that respect. If it exists in the universe of magic.
Exactly. And because we don't need to make it sacred, we don't need to mess with the energy of it in that respect.
Well, we don't necessarily need to add specific energy to it to make it sacred. It already came to us sacred.
Right. Or cleanse it and get rid of energies in that respect.
So yeah, and I expect we're going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here around cleansing, but when you are cleansing, actually I don't know that we're ready to go down that rabbit hole yet.
No, because we see cleansing as a blessing. I mean, in that respect, if somebody makes it something, they're a maker. Guitar.
Right. Say for example, somebody hands me a wand that they've made.
Yep, or a guitar. Say what's the it's been a handcrafted guitar just because, and you bought this guitar because you knew who the maker was. Same thing with a wand.
Okay.
You know that they put their personal energy into the crafting of that item. Okay.
Yeah, and I believe that I am adding some of my personal energy simply in making the selection and the purchase.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So why would you do anything by consecrating and therefore potentially getting rid of any of the energies that came with it? Because very often people associate consecrating with resetting something to its natural state.
Wiping a slate clean. Yeah.
Exactly.
Is kind of the model that I'm used to hearing.
Yes, exactly. And if you do that, you're losing all of that energy. So
yeah, I don't want to take away hundreds of hours of this guy's work and sweat and patience and stuff working on it. That's part of why I got the darn thing.
Exactly. Or the wand. Yep. The wand maker has blessed it and chosen a particular wood and done whatever they do to make it beautiful and shipped it to you. Okay. Now, the example we use when we start talking about resetting energies back to its natural state. And in the case of the guitar, the natural state is being full of that energy of that person who made it or the wand.
Right. It is a Joe the custom guitar maker guitar. Yes.
Exactly. You don't want to mess with it. You want it to have its own natural energies all the time. Right. So you don't need to consecrate it because to you it's already sacred. But by the same token, the guitar may have been handled by, I don't know, a shipping company where the guy was having a fight with his wife that had gone on for 2 weeks. So his is less than good energies, shall we say. Okay.
I'm gonna kind of slide your metaphor over. Most folks know I worked in a crystal store before.
Yeah, exactly. Crystals work better.
So let's look at a crystal that, when I pick up a crystal from a store, I make the assumption that yes, the crystal has its own sacred energies and magical qualities. Mm-hmm. It also has the last 40 people who have handled it. 40 is an arbitrary term, but it has the fingerprints and energy fingerprints of the different people along its journey to me.
Exactly. And we like to think that the rock can make up its own, the crystal can make up its own mind. It has its natural energy level, say
Okay.
X, all right? And all these other people have made X be covered by Y and Z and Q. So you have a mingling of all of those energies. And
Sure.
we tend to think that the items themselves, in this case, a crystal, has the right to recover in it from its journey. Because if it's gone home with you, it's now, hopefully, at least for now, in its current final spot.
Right.
You may pass it on to somebody later, but if you paid for it and brought it home, it is now
It is where it is. Yep.
it's done with its journey. All right. And we think that if a crystal, now that it's arrived, can recover like jet lag, because when we're people, we need to recover from our vacation if we've gone somewhere, and it's usually called jet lag. And we have to reset back to our natural levels of doing things. And we think that crystals and wands and whatever we buy, altar cloth candles, they all pick up those energies, have a right to sit there and decide what energies they want to keep and what energies they just kind of naturally, for want of a better word, slough off and have them go into the ether before they'll
Right.
come to work with us or not. It's based on, if you ask, things will usually tell you. There's a certain sense of, yes, I'm here to support whatever it is you're trying to do, or just fuck off, it's not the right one. You know, they can be really definitive sometimes, rocks in my world. They will tell me right away that, yeah, I'm not it.
So when you get a new crystal,
Mm-hmm.
you don't consecrate it,
No.
but you let it have a period of resting
Yeah.
and finding equilibrium in its new location.
Yes.
And where do you do that?
I have a shelf, and it just happens to sometimes get moonlight, and that's just because of the rotation of my house, which is why it's
Because
just
of the direction your house faces.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And as I have said before, it is a shelf where stuff gets left alone because it's in my room. It's the farthest from the door.
Yeah, it's the granny's room shelf. Don't go here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And people don't f with it, and so that it has a chance to sit there. And yes, it happens to get bathed in moonlight sometimes because it just happens to be sitting on that shelf. It was not a deliberate choice to put it on this shelf because it gets moonlight, even though it's kind
And
of said
you let it sit there and rest for how long?
till I can touch it and it tells me so.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know, certain affinity that says, okay, I am ready to come
Well,
out.
because what I'm seeing here is we do almost the same thing, but from completely the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
And it's a matter of semantics because I think I am not necessarily consecrating, but I am actively and energetically sanctifying. I'm looking for a word other than consecrate, because I get a new crystal and I understand that the crystal has its own energies plus a bunch of different people's, and some of those people's energies were healthy and good. And some of those people's energies were unhealthy or negative, or they were going through something or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
For me, though, I don't want to strip any of that.
Okay.
So when I get a new crystal, I acknowledge that it's been handled by that different range of people.
Okay.
And yet, now here's where we get to I guess I'm the one following the hardcore doctrine, because
Uh-huh.
they go on a ritual plate that sits on a base of selenite
Uh-huh.
on a shelf that in my house gets the moon every night. However, this shelf was intentionally created and built for the purpose of catching that moonlight. And I leave objects for an entire moon.
Mm-hmm.
What I basically do is I leave them there until the next dark moon.
No, I understood.
So what I am doing while I'm there, bathed in moonlight, sitting on selenite, I used to teach people clear away all of those other people's energies. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to modify that now in saying that, yeah, this is an opportunity between this object and the magic moon to let this object decide. I needed that person's lessons. I needed that person's suffering. Let the object under the moon without my involvement
Mhm.
find its new equilibrium in my place. And then after that time, I consider it to be, I hate to use the word cleansed, but here we are, cleansed, consecrated, sanctified, purified, nullified,
Yeah,
equalized, neutralized. I am actually going through a concrete and definite process with the things that I bring in.
yeah,
Whereas, even though I do believe that everything is sacred, just because everything is sacred doesn't necessarily mean that it's sacred and properly aligned with the Dave energy and the Dave universe. So
yeah.
like your description of jet lag is I'll let a new altar cloth sit on that plate folded up for a moon because I want it to be around my energy, understand my place in the genus loci, and the stuff of Susie's energy mixing around in the household. I want it to be comfortable before I reach to it and use it as a tool.
Bingo. That's the whole.
So
That's
I
the whole
sort of
thing.
am doing a process, but refusing to call it consecration.
Yeah, I don't think it's consecrating. You've just given it a spot, and you're trying to make it as comfortable as possible in your own way. And how you choose to do that,
Well,
like
and it's funny. I hesitated. It's funny you said that because the next step is they come off that plate, and then there's a place that they go. Oh my God, I have gemstone purgatory. Um, there's a place that they go until I decide what spot in my home they're going to live in, and those spots change a lot because
yes, no, I
I'm
do.
attention span.
We both have rocks all and things all over the place,
Right,
and they
exactly.
shuffle, and suddenly they're altars, and then they're not altars, and then there might be a shrine or two, and
But
just
I love the
look it together, and
taking the as I often do, taking it right back to a naked man walking the trail or a
yes,
naked human walking the trail. The consecration concept to me is while the stick is laying on the forest floor, it's a stick.
eh,
If I spot that stick and think that might make a good stang, or that might make a good tent pole for later, or
or
that might make a good wand, or that might be good in my ritual fire later. As I have that thought and reach and pick that stick up, that stick is in fact, in my terminology, now magical and consecrated.
yeah, in that respect. But you didn't do anything specific like a ritual to consecrate it. You picked it up and you're going.
I guess the assumption that I'm making is that no other human being has picked that stick up and looked at it and set it back down. That's funny because, I just had the thought, all right, if I brought the stick home, would it have to spend a moon on the plate? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm making the assumption that the stick found in the woods, or even the stone found in the woods, is in a more naturally, sacredly clean or balanced state than
Now,
if the stick was in a bin of sticks that someone had packaged to sell in a retail store, and I knew that 3 or 4 people before me had picked that stick up.
yeah, and I think instinctively, if you went out in the forest and picked up a stick and it had been handled before, you would
Mm-hmm.
know. That it wouldn't. You could pick up two sticks and you would know which one somebody else had handled because the energy would be a little bit different. And then it all goes back to paying attention to the
Sure,
around us.
sure, yep.
You know,
Being able to understand the energy for what it is.
yes, exactly. And like I said, I think anything I bring in, you just have a more deliberate process about it because I've got stuff I'm looking over here at my shelf that's probably been sitting here for 3 or 4 months because I haven't found it. its purpose yet.
Well,
When I got it,
just like Susie, when she used to find rocks, they lived for the first year in the bottom of her purse.
well, I was responsible for getting a lot of those rocks that lived in the bottom of her purse. So we'll leave that one alone. But it should have been registered as a lethal weapon, that purse. It
Oh
really
yeah, yeah. She was never unarmed. She had a
no,
bag of rocks on a rope.
exactly. And she could have hurt somebody badly. But back to what I was saying, and for me, a lot of stuff just kind of sits on the shelf there until all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can use that for this. And it's like, I know that it's marinated, I guess is the best word, long enough because I know what its purpose is now.
Okay, so funny story, but for all of that, I profess to not get all of this stuff. I get all of this stuff more than anybody realizes, or maybe everybody realizes it for me. But I moved one of my little crystal towers from the cluster of crystal towers on my one stand upstairs. I moved it to another place in my home
Uh-huh.
because I wanted it to be up on a different altar space. And
Yep.
when I picked it up, I literally said out loud, "Now say goodbye to your friends." Yeah.
But you get it. I mean,
And
you
then when I took it upstairs and I set it on the upstairs altar, I said, "So make yourself part of the family here." And so yeah, I guess I'm talking to these objects that probably is a good sign that I feel in one way or another that they're sacred.
yeah, and stones will talk back to you if you let them. They just it just takes them a while to get words out. They're very similar. The best analogy I think that Stu tried to give me was the Ents from The Lord of the Rings, the giant tree
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And the conversations would go on for months to get
So
sentences out.
I get that from the river myself. I don't get it from stones, but I tend to get it from water.
Yeah, it's the same idea.
Yep.
It depends on what you connect with easily. I seem to have somehow been blessed with rocks talking to me.
And Susie, it was plants.
Exactly. But I think that's why she and I fit so well together as practitioners because we each brought our own knowledge of sacred items with us,
Sure.
in that respect. To me, rocks, they may not talk to me in actual words. So occasionally I'll get a word.
You
Other
know,
than,
I'm gonna mess up huge
yep,
here and interrupt and
but,
say this on air, but I just had an idea for a future project.
oh dear. Yeah,
Um,
no.
why couldn't the liturgy be put to music, and it could be the music of the path? But let's get right back to our.
Oh yeah. I just wrote that down because that's what we do.
Yep.
Just saying.
The hits just keep on coming.
Oh yeah. That's a cosmic 2x4.
I have been getting some major work done recently on the website, which means as soon as I get that fixed, I can turn my attention back to the YouTube. We have formed a new business partnership alliance so that we can start getting some of our other social media stuff and banking and whatnot in order. So for the 8 people that are out there listening to us religiously every week, we certainly appreciate you. We are going to get caught up with this whole YouTube and internet sensation thing. We're just going to keep doing it a week at a time as long as we can do it. So we appreciate everybody out there.
And you will appreciate this because I keep track of this stuff. This is episode 60.
Wow.
I know.
Well, and I noticed you started getting some emails about some of the monographs that we offer are starting to do a little bit better. So,
Yes, KDP. I checked our minimal royalties and discovered somehow 10 of them sold in Australia.
wow.
And why Australia? I have no idea, but somebody's reading our stuff.
Absolutely. And we love you for it. And, we both have email addresses here. It's Elizabeth at youngcronescafe.com, all one word, or Dave at youngcronescafe.com. You are certainly welcome to reach out to us with good or bad If it's bad, we'll process it and set it in a special folder. And if it's good, we'll try to mention you on the air.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will answer, even if you send bad comments.
I can't wait till we get the YouTube up where I can start getting some comments, because that'll be some fun interactions in there.
Yeah, I think so. So with that being said, any more questions or demands or?
I am in great shape. I wish that you have a great week and less chaos ahead.
Oh yeah, and we are now clarified about what we mean by consecration, and
yes, absolutely.
We do and don't do with it.
I have resolved it down to the fact that yes, I do it, and yes, like most of the other things that we talk about, at the end of the day, it's all semantics. It's trying to put emotional and spiritual concepts into English construct words. And so do what you do and do it well, and be aware of what you do, and be aware of where you're doing it.
And be comfortable doing it.
Absolutely.
Because you have to work, it has to fit you. Otherwise, why are you bothered? So, with that being said, may you find mirth and reverence in all things.
Always the mirth. Gotta bring the mirth.
Oh, please, yes, the mirth.
Be safe, be kind, and be loved.
Practices of the path. These are the hows and whats that we, as practitioners on the path, actually do in our own lives. Everything from the various tools that we work with, as well as those we don't and why, to the solar and lunar cycles, herbs we use, crystals and stones that we work with, candles, incenses, and anything else we come up with that can give an understanding of what we personally do with our magical practices. Today we're moving on. We seem to be doing a reporter's thing, the who, what, when, where, how. Right now we're on the where.
Where we do what we do when we do that which we do.
Exactly. And
one of these days I'm going to have to come up with a song out of that. You just know this is going to come.
Oh, yeah, come on. Yeah, it's going to be out there. It's going to be our YouTube theme. I can see it now. But that's
do what we do when we do what we did to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that might have already been done, but chick.
Who knows? But we'll be here all week. But
no, really, we live here.
I mean, you can literally practice magic and ritual or whatever, whatever you practice anywhere. But I think we tend to, as people, gravitate towards certain spots that are ours and where we feel comfortable to do stuff.
Sure, I would agree with that.
More than anything else, I mean, when I get the chance, I like to go to Genesee Valley Park. Mm-hmm. And there's a big old tree there that is now in pieces because it finally got struck by lightning and, fell over.
Yep.
I like to go by that tree because it's been around since before it was Rochester, is how old that tree was.
When that tree was a sapling, there were Native Americans living in that area along the side of the river. I know the tree that you're referring to. Yep.
Exactly. And I just like sitting next to it and feeling the weight of history, for want of a better word, and how much that tree has witnessed in that respect.
So something that you mentioned quite a few different times or places in the book, I just want to throw in there, because that place that you're talking about, and it's interesting that I have a companion place to that place just on the other side of the river over here where I meditate, is pretty much directly across from that tree. What I wanted to mention is genus loci, or places that, because of some prior or some other energy, people think about like doing ritual in a graveyard. Well, there are all kinds of different places that have what you described as the weight of history, or the density or whatever. That there are places that just sort of naturally compel us to say, yeah, this is a place where it would serve me well to do my magic here.
Exactly. I think so. And I think that's what we're looking for when we look for those important places.
Mm-hmm.
In that
Absolutely.
respect. And I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes we need those important places to do stuff.
Sure.
Like by the tree, like you said, and Sue used to have a place by the canal.
Yep.
And And the other piece of that is there's that natural piece.
Well,
Like
and I wanna step back just for a second to that place next to the canal, just in memory.
yeah.
Um, I know the place. I've ridden by it. I've looked at it on the map both before and after she passed.
Mhm.
But in 15 years together, I didn't hear about that particular place until her condition had been considered terminal, and we were having those kind of conversations. And I think it's so beautiful that even through a decades long relationship, she had kept that place kind of as hers. You know, she had never taken me there, although we had driven by it. And I think we might have even stopped there. But
Yes.
that was her spot to go collect herself and ground herself and cry and scream or do whatever and reconnect herself.
Yes.
And so now, after her passing, I can go to that place and there is distinctly that palpable energy. When we first bought this property from Jeremy, which Jeremy, if you're listening, hi, we love you, we miss you. When we first bought the property and put that semicircle of the fruit trees in the back, we consciously knew that what we were building there was a focal point or an energy point in our yard. And to this day, you know, there's like a little natural amphitheater of magic out there in that zone. So some of these places have been created for centuries through history. Some of these places have just been created because enough people have gone to that place and done magic that it's like it's in the dirt.
I
You
think
know,
so.
if you think about from a Muggle point of view, if you think about a place like Inspiration Point, where thousands of people have gone there and written a poem or something like that, that place itself has its own genus loci or magical presence.
I think so. Spirit of place, I like to think of them as.
Thank you. That was what I was looking for. Yeah.
That's the real, genus loci is the fancy name, but if you think about it, it is a spirit of place, and it could be, like I said, naturally occurring, and it's been there well before people showed up, or it's created by the energy of enough people doing something that they consider sacred or important.
And that's kind of what I was just describing. Certainly.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And unfortunately, there's also the negative energy that we create because the battlefields tend to have that same sort of energy, but in a different form, I think.
I understand completely that you see it that way.
Yes.
Um, for me, I don't. Guess it's just because the direction that my practice has shifted over the last few years,
Uh-huh.
but I don't necessarily pay attention that much to the color or the flavor of energy as I do to the density of it.
I understand.
So, although something like a concentration camp or something like that coming to mind, I'm sure there would be a profound.
Energetic
I
signature.
mean, I've been to the USS Arizona Memorial
Uh-huh.
in Pearl Harbor, and I've been to the D-Day Normandy beaches. So I can't say that there isn't a palpable wrongness in that energy, but I tend to focus myself, especially now, as just that there's energy there and not necessarily, it kind of came from me getting away from the positive and negative and just understanding it as energy.
Well, I have been to some of those places as well, and battlefields like Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the energy isn't negative so much as it's so filled with sorrow
Sure.
and remembrance and the people who were lost for what they thought was the right and just cause. Because
Well, and
or
sorrow is exactly the right word. I mean, sorrow at the end of the day is the result of war. No matter whose side you're on.
yeah, and I think when you have two sides like you're battling and people are giving their lives for what they honestly believe in, because every war I think that people have fought in general, both sides thought they were on the one true right side. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't
Sure.
matter who won. in that respect, especially when you're talking about a battle that happened a long time ago.
Right.
Right. But the sense of sorrow that young people had to go out and do that is kind of around in that respect. And for me, the energy is just as sacred.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's different. So that's just me. But
So what other kind of places do you do the wear of what you do when you do?
in my car,
Okay.
which is very pragmatic because a lot of times I have time to do a quick something or other when I'm sitting waiting for a kid who's supposed to be at a football practice 45 minutes ago. You know,
Right. Yeah, I understand that you're the family bus driver, so you get a lot of time sitting in parking lots. I would imagine you probably have some powerful prayer going on in that car from time to
in
time.
that respect, yeah, in my car, let's be honest. And a lot of times there's nobody else there to interrupt me. Part of being the family bus driver is you have a lot of people to put on and off the bus
Right.
and trying to find time. They're older now, so that I can say to them, I need 10 minutes to myself, and they usually respect it.
You'll at least get 4. Right. Right.
Yeah, but you see where I'm going.
I
But
do.
if I am in my car and away from the house,
Uh-huh.
and I know nobody's coming for the next half hour from the football field or wherever,
It does give you at least temporary zones of safety and peace and sanity. I love it.
you got it. Yes.
I've been trying to carry mine with me in that I've gotten, months and months ago, I did a thing about a spray, and now my friend Andy has created a new sanity spray for me. So
Uh-huh.
I carry that with me, and when I need that space, I spray that spray in my face, and I feel like the bubble is a little stronger, and people will give me a little bit more room.
I understand it.
Because I've done a lot of especially recently, I've done a lot of my magic or my practices are done wherever I am. And I guess that's the pragmatic in me. I do the house security thing when I'm at the doorknob, and I do I hope the bus will be on time when I get to the bus stop and those kind of things. But there are, when we spoke earlier about talking about the wares, there are specific places around my home that I have found that I do specific kinds of magic.
Oh, me too.
When I'm doing love or relationship or feminine or any of those kinds of energies, I have sort of built a little bit of a Susie Shrine wall that has more and more elements of my mother rolled into it. And I realized this morning, laying there looking at it for a minute, that this is one of my wares, in that this is one of the places that most often I light candles or incense and whisper an intention. So it is one of my wares, but it's become more of a goddess altar in general, encompassing Susie and you and my significant others and that kind of energy. So it's kind of a sacred feminine altar that I have there. And realizing that, I also recognize that down here in the studio, where I'm mostly the creative musician when I'm not building things, I have another altar down here that seems to be generalized with masculine or projective, or I know we don't live in the positive and negative or masculine and feminine, but those aspects are still there. And if I'm doing something heartfelt, I'm doing it up there on my goddess altar. And if I'm doing something practical or concrete, a project, or I'm building something, or I'm trying to learn something, that kind of stuff I do tend to do down here on this altar.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a couple of spots out in the yard and even in the garage that I'll do certain kinds of magic. The criteria I use to make the list is, what kinds of magic will I do where instead of just doing it where I'm standing, I will take a few steps to go over to this corner of the yard or this corner of the room or this corner of the garage
Mhm.
to do that. So I've recognized that, yeah, okay, there is a spot that I try to stand when I'm doing that. You know, when I'm trying to wish myself a happy day, I'm doing it standing at the kitchen sink, looking through the window out the backyard, like I watched and heard about my mother doing for a gazillion years. So there are places around me that, yep, I'll step over into that for a minute. And
Make-
then there are other kinds that I'll just do them wherever I am, or some of them are specific to the person. You know, there are spots that I will go over to the river, and specifically that's because I want to talk to Susie, and it's where her and I did some talking.
Yeah.
Or when I am feeling alone and small and I need to contact my last two dogs to feel that sort of canine companionship, there is another place along the river along the river where I used to sit and let them run. And so there's enough of my energy sitting there that if I go sit there calmly, it's amazing, but I smell beagle.
Well, of course you do.
So yeah, I hadn't realized the context of where I'm doing these little almost unconscious or subconscious practices is almost as important as what kind of music or magic that I'm working.
I think so. And I find it interesting that you split your altars into the feminine and then the doing and the creating and the building. And I wonder if that's because you're a guy. Because I don't split mine that way.
Well, and originally, early in my paganization, so to speak,
Okay.
my first couple of reads and my first couple of books and my first couple of people that I interacted with were all very strong, focusing on an altar space.
Okay.
So I sort of got used to, you know, if you're going to play drums, you sit behind the drum set.
Yes.
If you're going to work on a car, you pick up the hood and you lean over. There
Yeah.
are places where if you're going to do this thing, this is where you do it. And
Uh-huh.
I kind of coupled that. So a couple of years ago, and you helped me walk through some of this where I had the penny in the shoe and whatnot,
Yeah.
where I was simply trying to do anything everywhere
Yeah.
just to help me see that instead of walking through the mundane and the magical, I was really sort of trying to swirl them together
Uh-huh.
and consider the universe as my cathedral, so to speak, in that all space is both sacred space and mundane.
At the same
But
time.
but now this internal pendulum of mine, as Susie would have put it, seems to be swinging back to there are places where because something in me feels a certain way about a certain place, something else in me feels that it's appropriate that I do this sort of magic in this sort of context.
Yeah, I get it. Because there are times I feel like that too. And I don't think it has anything to do with, I don't think the ideas contradict each other.
No, no, not at all. I think
I think
they
because,
support each other.
yeah, and I think it's especially because we have imbued our own energy into those places as well.
Sure,
Previous workings.
sure,
So
absolutely.
it's like you standing at the kitchen sink, you have that memory of your mom doing the same thing. So
Well,
there's that association, and you've done it enough times.
and the funny thing is, I believe that these things last.
Well, I do too.
So if you took me back to the forest down around where I grew up and where I deer hunted when I was a boy, and if you dropped me off in that area, I would immediately, no matter how much the land has changed, geography doesn't that much. People just build stuff. Um, but I would work my way to a spot where I felt comfortable and remembered the lay of the land, even though I hadn't been there since I was 17 or 18.
Yes.
I would seek out one of those places to then strike out from and say, okay, this is my known point. Even though I haven't been there in 40 years, I know a spot where I was able to be a successful hunter, or
Yes.
I know a spot where I fell asleep. You know,
No, I understand completely because I think that as witches and as people in general, we tend that was what I meant by the sorrow that's imprinted on the land of the battlefield in that respect. We
Hmm.
tend to imprint things. And as witches, when we are practicing magic, we tend to imprint certain places with our magic and our intent.
And
That
our intention.
and
Absolutely.
this is where we do
Absolutely.
this, and this is where we do this. And because I don't know about you, but I tend to practice these same types of spells and the same types of magic more frequently.
Hmm.
Certain ones I do more frequently than others, and because of that, I'm going back to those places because that's where I did it last time, and it worked. And like you said, we're practical. We want to stack the deck for success if we're doing magic. So if I did the spell, I don't know, for whatever over here the last time, and it worked. If I got a shot, I'm going back to that same spot. The next time I'm doing that same kind of magic, I'm going to do it.
Well, and
And I
not
think,
not for nothing. I just had the happy thought that when you and I this summer get a chance to do ritual together out in the yard,
oh yeah,
I will try to remember back on the last time that you did that ritual in that yard with Sue, and I will try to recreate the surroundings or the furniture or the art implements or whatever to try to match that, because those those elements of our context are just as important as a model of a man on a wall with a cross or with different symbols or different torches or whatever. We create the where of the places where we work our magic.
exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can talk about when we're talking about practices is you have to find the wares that spark something in you.
Or recognize that you have already found that place and you've already done it there 3 or 4 times. So
And
yeah, let's just lean into this.
yeah, exactly. It's like we were talking about in my car. I'm just mad because my car got totaled last week, and I've done a lot of magic in that car, and I was
And I want to offset that mad with no one was hurt, and I am so happy, and you were
yeah,
blessed.
but it's still a pain. But you know what I mean. Just like Sue and I used to go with our friend Jeremy, and now we're really dating ourselves back 20 years of practices, um, to one of the local cemeteries a lot.
Yep.
Because there was one spot if you climbed around the back way up the hill and off to the side where there was a wall there, and it was like a square, and why it was there we have no idea.
Hmm.
And there appeared to be gravestones inside the wall, but it wasn't like it was a family because we managed to brush the dust of years off several of them, and the names didn't match. So it
Right.
wasn't like it was a family plot kind of thing. But we used to go there and do magic a lot because A, it was quiet, and B, back then we were into cemeteries.
Well, and it felt like a sacred place.
And it is a sacred space,
Yep.
place. And we used to do ritual there all the time. We'd gather up our stuff and hike up there, and we were respectful. We weren't destroying property or tipping gravestones or, and
Right.
it was a spot where all three of us felt called to go for a while.
Yep.
So there you go. I mean, I like I said, and I tend to do a lot of stuff in my room because my room is kind of my universal everything around here in terms of my life. And I have little,
It is your nest. Absolutely. In a
yeah,
house full of busy kids, it is your nest.
my spot where it's like this is my room. Don't bring your crap in here. This is where my crap is, kind of thing. And I have different altars, like you mentioned, all over my house as well. I mean, one spot I have in my bay window here is my ancestor altar because I like the thought of the sun shining on the pictures I have of my relatives,
Hmm.
and I have all sorts of little. You can never have too many altars, let's be honest about that one.
Nope, my world is an altar. I just wander around in it a lot.
Yeah, me too. And then I collect little things that seem to fit together. And all of a sudden now I have another altar over here and another one over there. And, a lot of them are temporary and then they disappear when I'm done with them or, you know, disappear into the house somewhere because I forgot I put one over there in the corner, and people move things. But you know what I mean. So yeah, I think and I don't necessarily practice spell work at my altars sometimes.
Hmm.
I have one for creativity where I practice spell work all the time, usually to get myself out of whatever corner I've currently written myself into with what I'm writing. And I call them corners because they're like dead ends. I'm sitting there and I'm like banging my head in the corner like I don't know where I'm going next. And
Right.
I do that creativity thing that I do, and eventually it works itself out kind of thing.
Right.
You know, I do a lot of spells in front of my computer just for that reason. So where's somewhere else do you go to? Just one more thing on your daily interactions with the world.
So I had to leave this one for the last just because I'm not sure if this is going to go down the rabbit hole of laughter or if it's
Okay.
just going to drop like a stump and we'll leave it there.
Sure.
I do so much of my intention, my morning intention, like you do your thing standing at your dresser in the morning. I do so much of it while I'm sitting there taking my morning constitutional. I have to admit it, my downstairs bathroom from X hour till Y hour in the morning is my sanctuary and it is my spiritual, I'm going to get myself geared up for this day place.
That makes perfect sense because we all have those routines, and it's how you think of them more than
It's the
anything else.
one place that I sit for 10 minutes every single morning, no matter what on earth has happened. And so the genus loci of not only that room, but that particular pose for me has just that's where I do some of my best thinking.
Well, you think it makes perfect sense. It really does.
And I do think a lot while I'm on the bike, but here again, I tend to think of very light and airy things because a certain part of my intention is being that ever watchful sort of threat analysis radar machine. So,
which actually makes sense,
yep,
especially when you're riding a bike on Rochester streets. They don't share well,
right.
you know. But I
But
get
that's about what I got on the wares of where I do what I do.
Oh yeah. Well, I will mention that I now have a new deck, so I'm starting to work out there, and I can go stand out there and I see the moon come up from that direction because that's the way it works, the direction
Do
my
an
house.
improved and enlarged deck. Yep, I love
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I've shared a moment out there with you.
Yeah, exactly. And then I will mention briefly because a lot of witches, some witches get really, but you can't bring electronics into ritual or spell work or whatever. Guess what?
But we don't live there.
No, we don't, because you and I've done ritual and spell work with you over the internet. And Sue and I discovered that wonderful tool during COVID.
Yep.
That if we couldn't get together in person, why should we not do what we want to do anyway? And the energy seemed to spark just fine.
Yeah, the internet's just a tool.
I
That's all.
think so.
Like
I
a
think,
telephone.
yes. Which other people say you shouldn't bring it to circle either, but that's only because it rings annoyingly. I think that's the real reason.
Well, if yeah, see, that to me isn't about being proper. That to me is about being a grown up. If you're stepping into a sacred situation, turn your phone off. If not, you're just a dick.
I agree.
Sorry. There it
No, I
is.
agree completely. But we
I
do
mean,
have
I don't mean to be coarse for the people out there listening, but if you're walking around a sacred ritual with me or something like that, and your phone goes off, the look you're going to get from me is yeah, all right, you are no longer here.
Yeah, pretty much. I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
And then it's
But
not the electronics, it's the person. So we'll leave that one alone
right,
and just let people know, remind them that you have to find your own wares just like you do. And I do mean WHERES, just like you do anything else.
sure. And
In
in some cases, you've already found it. You just haven't recognized it and labeled. Okay, this is a place where usually when I'm here, I do this.
Yeah,
Look
exactly.
look for those because you'll find that there's already like I sat down last night to make a list getting ready for this, and you see what I came up with. That half of those I didn't realize that I was doing those specific things in those specific places until we had this segment about where. So I'm glad we had it.
Guess what? And like so much magic, it's like pay attention, people.
Yeah.
more than anything else.
I guess something that I would also just tack on to the end of that is the understanding. I don't want it to be a warning, but the understanding that you are working your magic out there, whether you are intentionally and actively and thinking about working your magic or wandering around blindly in a fog, you are working your magic. So a lot of what we talk about is just becoming aware of the magic that you're already doing.
I think so. Practical magic for the everyday witch. These are simple spells we use that don't require a lot of ingredients for correspondences, or sometimes no ingredients at all. Because we like to be able to use magic to deal with the practical everyday stuff, this is what we have to share. However, the biggest reminder about spellcraft is that the best spells are the ones you create for yourself, because they are a part of your own magic. There are 3 important components to any spell. Number 1 is setting your intent. This means that you need to be able to state clearly and precisely what you want your spell to do and how you want it to be done. Number 2 is ingredients. Any physical items you need to cast your spell, such as candles or herbs, or to act as correspondences, which are representations of something physical that you don't have right in front of you or are trying to come up with or manifest. Finally, number 3 is some sort of way to raise energy. All spells are powered by energy, and there are a number of different ways to raise this type of energy, including chanting or various movements. As the light keeps increasing, it's always a good idea to check on your intentions and everything else that you're thinking about. So, in the spirit of new perspectives, there are times you can all use this quick spell for resetting how you look at things. You can benefit from a chance to reset your thinking, which can change your actions in all parts of your life. The intent is, I need to reset and gain a new perspective. The only ingredients you need for this spell is a newish quarter. Now, the spell chant is, as I flip this coin, the old no longer controls, and I begin again renewed and aware of my personal goals. The steps are, you start with the coin tail side up. Now state your intention out loud. Say the chant 3 times and flip the coin after you finish each repetition of the chant. When you are done, say out loud, new ways of looking at things I now do see, as I will, so mote it be. Now keep the coin in your pocket, and when you feel yourself getting stuck in old ways of thinking and acting again, flip the coin around in the air a few times to reactivate this spell. The idea is we can all use new ways of looking at things sometimes. We tend to be creatures of habit, as all people do, and not necessarily like change. So this is a good way to jumpstart some of that for yourself. Before we go, we would like to present you with a tip or trick or witchy hint, just something to make your day go better, because we live in a mixture of the magical and the mundane.
For this episode, our tip, trick, or witchy hint is about minding the path that we're on, or simply how to remain continually aware of the steps that are under our feet. Recently, it's occurred to me more and more that my life, both magically and in the mundane, is so often about momentum. Sue used to call it inertia, the build up of energies on a flywheel, or in other ways, the absence or the dissipation of those energies. When I'm rolling forward and getting through day by day and getting things accomplished, I feel that I'm rolling forward. I feel that I'm living and growing, and I'm grateful for that motion. And in those times when I'm feeling stagnant or stuck, lacking my drive, I struggle with those times, and I struggle deeply with it. So it's just a part of our lives that we find ourselves sometimes like we're swimming upstream or trying to claw our way along a difficult path. And yet recently I've had recurrent thoughts about just that, about the metaphor of calling it a path, and how much I've internalized that over the past couple years. My life is a path, and there are days when I feel like it's a yellow brick road. Clean, clear, well lit, and encouraging. A road you kind of almost want to rush to see what's around the next bend. And our life has days that way, that feel that way. And then there are days when I feel like I have to hack my way through each and every tangle, like a machete through the jungle. Like each and every step, there are vines reaching for me and things just trying to be in my way. And it struck me today that so much of what I often forget about is being consciously aware both of the path, whether it's easy or hard, straight or complex, and the stuff that the universe puts in my path, the stuff the universe throws into it. Here's a positive example. So I realized that through 4 sets of appointments over the last 3 weeks with doctors and diagnosticians and staff, every single step of this path, when I've gotten to the building, there's been a parking place out front. And every single time I've made it to the appointment on time, and all of the people have been pleasant, and all of the paperwork has been in order, and all of these things have been happening so smoothly. It gives me a very calming feeling right now that things around this health issue will be resolving themselves neatly and with a minimum of fuss or drama or hassle. Is the universe not providing me right now with a clear and blessed path forward towards recovery? And so in recognizing those things, I realize that this is going well, and this is going well, and this is going well. And so I can feel some of that natural optimism or that natural inertia, that flywheel of positive that I've built up. Now I have plenty of examples for negative that when I started to break them down, they actually resolved to just a different kind of negativity. But here's an example I have about the path and how it applies to recognizing when we're on the path that might not be correct for us. I have a friend of mine and I that have been shopping, trying to find a particular piece of furniture, a sofa. And we've been to a half a dozen different stores, a half a dozen different brands, and store after store, week after week, of like 3 different across the state visits. Every time that we actually think that we've picked out what we want, either they don't have it in stock or that applicable sale has ended. Each time we go to a different store, they've got a bunch of stuff that's close to what we want, but not exactly what we want. Each time the store has had some sort of unique and independent drama, just something weird and unusual that doesn't look smooth and comforting to me on my path. So after all of this effort and this drama and this hassle of looking for a sofa, I begin to look for the reason that I'm assuming the universe simply does not want me to have a sofa right now. The universe is literally throwing obstacle after obstacle and twist after twist and literally just garbage in my path just to get in my way. So instead of fussing about the fact that this is going on, I have to wonder, in that message, what is the universe trying to tell me? I mean, I have to recognize that there must be some reason beyond my frustration. There must be some reason that the right sequence hasn't fallen into events, or we would pull in and there would be a perfect parking spot and we would walk in and find the perfect sofa in the perfect color. I believe that sofa is out there. I also believe that right now, for some reason, the universe doesn't want me to have it. So when you see that there is stuff being thrown in front of you, whether they're obstacles or resistances or whatever. Just something to be mindful of is if I'm walking an easy path and this feels right and this feels true and it feels like I'm moving forward, there's a good chance instinctively that I probably know I'm on the right path. And if I'm having to fight and slog and kick and scream my way uphill to try to get something that I really feel like I want, maybe I don't necessarily need it. Maybe it's not right for me to have it. Or maybe it's not right now for me to have it. For now, be safe, be kind, and be loved.
Well, it looks like the coffee cups are empty for this week. We hope you join us again next Tuesday. But you can find us at our website, 2youngcrones.com. That's the number 2, Young Crones.
We'd love to have you join our growing online Discord community. Check out our new Patreon presence. Just look for Young Crones Cafe. Through Patreon, you'll be able to make it to our Discord. We are also Young Crones Cafe on Twitter and Facebook.
Until then, remember, we are witches who work with energies to effect change.
We are believers in both immanent and transcendent divine.
We are celebrants of the passage of the solar and lunar cycles.
We are hedge walkers who pass back and forth between the worlds of the magical and the mundane.
We are seekers of knowledge.
And we are walkers of a spiritual tradition we call the Path.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.